So this is I call this just the 7 steps to marketing. And the purpose of this is really just to share with you that there's a series of steps that you want to do, and they all have specific objectives. So when you take a target market, okay? So here's what we want to do. First, you want to define your target market. And we'll go into each of these individually. Demographics, geographics, psychographic barriers, gateways, vehicle delivery, unique segment position. Okay, we'll go into those individually. But that when you define that, remember there's the 80-20 rule where 20% of that market is responsible for 80% of the purchases. So it's not an equal distribution. So when we pay attention to demographics, psychographics, geographics, all these things, we need to pay attention to the minority in each of those categories that creates the majority of the business. Okay, so that increases your probability of getting business. And it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a chiropractic patient, a personal injury attorney. There's always a target market in every product or service. One thing you don't want to do is just chase everybody. And again, chiropractic is known for chasing everybody. And you don't want to do that. You'll waste a lot of time and money doing that. So we start with a defined target market, go to a SWOT analysis, and what that is it evaluates the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So what are the strengths of your particular product or services? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities, and what are the threats? And of course, a lot of that depends on what your competition is saying and doing relative to all these categories I keep talking about. Because you don't want to just say what your competition is saying, okay? So the next category is we'll go into publicity. So we have our target market. We understand some of our strengths and weaknesses relative to what they're doing. So we pick ours, and then we start with publicity. So we like to start with publicity. And remember, the primary purpose of publicity is to increase awareness and authority. Awareness, name recognition, and authority. Do you expect to get a lot of business from publicity? No, that's not what it's for. The only business you'll get is people that already have a need, and they have a high perceived need. So you get a low. And where does publicity fit in the formula of the core of a purchase? Need relative to obstacles and trust. It only affects one of them, trust. That's the relationship, okay? So having said that, there's publicity. So from that same target market, we'll go to publicity, we'll go to advertising. What's the purpose of the advertising? Remember, advertising typically deals with only 2 of the 3 categories, offer or trust. And it's also to increase the awareness, interest, and desire. So you will get some purchases, some action, but that's, if there's no perceived need, it won't at all. So really what advertising does is it focuses on the 5 categories. After people have a perceived need, it focuses on the 5 categories of where and why they're going to buy their product. A trust factor, quality, service, price, proximity, one of those factors. So that's the advertising. So we'll use advertising. We won't use it to get business, with personal injury attorneys. We won't use it to get business from advertising because remember, they don't have a need yet. We're still ramping up the need. So we will use advertising only to stair step, to start to increase the awareness, interest, and desire. That's what that does. Okay? And then of course there's the educational sales. And of course what we're talking about now is the right side of the S-curve. And that's where that vast majority of business is, whether it's chiropractic patients or personal injury attorneys. And so now we use educational sales. And what's the key here? The very first thing is to establish need. That's the very first thing. Because if there's no perceived need, there's no need for them to refer you anybody. There's no need for a patient to come in. There's no perceived need. So that's what happens first. And by the way, it is in this form, it is in this order. It's need relative to obstacles and trust. You cannot talk about the obstacles or obstacles until you've established need. You can't. When I say obstacles, I'm also talking about service factors, okay? So, establishes need, it minimizes obstacles. Number 6 is deliver. So now you have to do what you say you're going to do. You have to deliver the product or service. And so in personal injury with attorneys, it's deliver the documentation, deliver the goods, deliver the good documentation. Because that alone will stop for you from getting business. And then number 7 is the follow-up. And that's a huge problem. Chiropractors are terrible at follow-up. So one of the couple of things, there's 3 contacts increase the likelihood and increase the likelihood of getting business 50%. So you never do advertising or marketing once. You do a minimum of 3 because it increases the likelihood of participation 50%. So whatever it is you're going to do, never just plan on doing it once. And then it reminds them of the need and the solution. So part of the follow-up is to maintain and help establish the need. In other words, as an example with these attorneys, when you don't follow up, their perceived need and value starts going down and they move on. They don't need you anymore. So you have to maintain a follow-up, but what do you follow up with? It's a very specific message that you do follow up with. And it helps to create the value and maintain the relationship. That's what it does. So not only that, but there's also the cross-selling. Now, what's cross-selling with personal injury attorney? Well, the most common one is when you get the attorney to send you business for the soft tissue injury, and then you cross-sell them into the disc injury. And I'll go into why you never go in with the disc injury. But that's kind of a cross-sell for the personal injury attorney. So we'll go in with the soft tissue injury to get the business, and then we'll cross-sell them into how we can help with the disc injury also, and how a lot of what we're doing documentation-wise is very beneficial. Matter of fact, it's way more beneficial when they have our documentation with a disc injury as opposed to just an MRI and a disc injury alone. They'll have a 6% impairment rating just with a disc injury. Well, if you have a disc injury, what's the chances that you have ALMSI or altered intersegmental motion? Well, you definitely do, or you would not have a disc injury. And that gives anywhere from a 12% to a 25% impairment, plus associated findings. So a disc injury is way better when it's documented from the soft tissue angle perspective and not just the disc injury. But you can't go in, you can't mark it, you can't go in for the disc injury. Why? You're not the authority. Not only do they not have a perceived need for you, but you are not the authority with a disc. Who's the authority with a personal injury attorney? Who is the type of doctor? It's an orthopedist neurosurgeon. Yeah, that's right. That's who the authority is. They don't think they need you at all. If anything, they think you're going to hurt the case. And that's why a lot of times they won't involve you in that disc case until you do educational sales. Then they'll see how the value works.